All right, let's do something here. I I just recently created. I have to keep my glasses on. I just recently created a Substack for myself under my pen name for my novel, and I decided to post something there. It's kind of what you're supposed to do. It's what is Substack? It's blogs, email lists, vlogs, video blogs, and some other things. So it's not uncommon to find writers that also have a Substack presence where they can do some writing. And the articles tend to be longer format. They don't have to be, but they can be. And more literary people who like to write. So not Twitter. 244 characters or whatever it is. So I wrote something on Substack, and it won't get much airtime there because I don't have a following and nobody really knows who I am or cares about what I'm doing. But I thought I could read it here on YouTube, so I spare you the trouble of going over there and trying to find me. The title is Alternative Energy is Already Part of the Past, so this is not going to be a popular topic. I understand that. Really nothing I do is all that popular. My job is not to be popular. My job is to be right, says everybody, right? This was stimulated by my wife this morning pointing out that Bill McKibben has a new book out called Here Comes the Sun, which is also the name of a Beatles tune from back in the day. And she was listening to it, audiobook. Somehow she got her hands on it. She was listening to it, and I probably won't listen to it. I've been following Bill McKibben for a long time, and 3/4 of the time, the things he says are how to describe it. I mean, I don't want to be hurtful. He's talking some kind of a talk. I think he's a bit like Al Gore. He's a bit antiquated, and he hasn't kept up. His talk has not kept up with the times. You can listen to a current Al Gore speech, and I've listened to some just recently, and it's exactly the same talking points from when he was doing An Inconvenient Truth. And that, I don't know how to say this, so I'll just say it. That is completely inappropriate. We are not having the same conversation now that we were having 40 years ago. Least of all, that we were having 70 years ago. Things are evolving very, very quickly. And I am now very firmly of the opinion that we can't do anything about this, and we need to get to the lifeboats. And some people are going to say that's defeatist, and some people are going to say, you're not giving technology a chance, and we need to have better leadership and better treaties and better legislation and better policy and all these things. I'm just not buying it. I'm just not buying it. I know all that. I've heard all that, and I'm simply not buying it. I don't buy it. And you look at you, before you go down below and write your nasty comment, which you're entitled to do. Before you do that, still go down and write your nasty comment. But before you do that, take a look at the landscape we're working under and tell me where there's any possibility of policy, or where there's any leadership on the global or even the state stage that is tackling this problem in a substantial way, or where there's any media outlet, even one, that is contributing to our understanding of our current predicament. And it is a predicament. It is a wicked problem, that we are in a wicked problem, and no one's saying these things, and no one really wants you to know. They just want you to keep beating a dead horse, driving and flying and Amazon Prime, and go to your job and work on your career and fund your 401k, and just do that. BAU, business as usual, and then the axe is going to fall. That's it. That's how this is going to be. So anyway, I got all fired up about that. I just hate this. I just hate what we've become. What have we become? I don't know how to go there. I just don't know how to go there. I think we're better than this. I'll say that. I'm going to try and say something nice. I think we are better than this. Now, There's plenty of evidence that we're not better than this. Oh yeah, but I'm going to try and be optimistic here, and I think we're better than Al Gore. And I think we're better than Bill McKibben. And I think we're better than all this. I think we can do this. We're not doing this, but I think we could. Is that okay? Can I say that? Let me read my article posted to Substack. Title: Alternative energy is already part of the past. Subtitle: We need to move on. Our next move is probably our last. Bill McKibben has a new book out. It's called Here Comes the Sun. That's also the title of a snappy Beatles song. Bill's book, not the song, is about solar power saving the human world from fossil fuels. So that's nice, I guess. It's probably a little late in the game for saving the modern world from climate change, but okay. I installed solar power on my home a decade ago. I have a huge lithium iron phosphate battery array as well. Why'd you turn that off?
Because I'm hearing a sound.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, yeah, I'm just hearing noise.
It's just kind of hot.
Audio.
It's kind of hot in here, but it's fine.
There's noise on your audio. If you want to stop for a second, like there's something like maybe your headsets are there, or there's like a background sound. You stopped?
What do you mean stopped? I'm not saying anything.
Anyway, I was just noticing some
I don't really hear
audio
any
noise.
It could just be a background hum. I don't know. Something in the system. I'm telling you, my audio is really not very good.
Alright, fine. Not bad. It's just a little bit disturbed.
It's just like a unbalanced hum.
Yeah. It's just like a
Maybe it's the AC.
Oh, maybe it's that. It could be that.
You could turn that off if you want to. The challenges of having an audio studio in your house when there's everything going on. So, back to the post. I installed solar power on my home a decade ago. I have a huge battery array as well. I converted my home to all electric for absolutely all parts of a modern home. I installed heat pump, heating, and cooling. And I ride an electric bike for nearly all my needs. My home consumes almost zero electricity from the grid, and then only in the winter. I am all in and 100% happy with the results. I can tell you right now, solar power isn't going to change anything or save anyone. Solar power absolutely will not save the human world. Without fossil fuels in their daily lives, most people will perish. They will die, and they won't be long in going about it either. I still recommend going all solar with storage batteries. Moreover, buy an electric vehicle and charge it at home from your batteries. An e-bike is fine for most people, but if you insist on buying a full-sized electric car, then you will need a lot of batteries, twice what I have now for my all-electric home. Do it anyway. Spend the money. It won't save anyone, mind you, and it won't solve global heating. Do it anyway. And you need to make this move right now, before a likely post-industrialization rug pull leaves us all high and dry for anything more complicated than a wooden spoon. Regarding Here Comes the Sun, I have to ask, what is the point of a book extolling the virtues of solar power in saving the current human world from global heating? Everyone should have solar, but does anyone question that anymore? Apart from some mouth-breathing troglodyte living in a single-wide with a lifted truck painted in stars and stripes, owning 7 AR-15s, and living a redneck fantasy funded by taxes collected in California and New York, apart from that guy, the rest of us get it. So, did Bill write this book about solar power saving the world for that guy with the lifted truck? Bill did not. He wrote this book for people who do not need convincing about the virtues of solar power, but who instead need a story arc about how Bill McKibben has an idea to save the world from the ravages of out-of-control planetary physics using solar power. But Bill cannot save us from physics. Period. Full stop. Least of all with solar power. Least of all from global heating. That is just not happening now, people. This Titanic is headed for the bottom. Get to the lifeboats. I just published my first novel. It is about the end of the world and getting to the lifeboats. There is solar power in the book. It's important to survival, and the people in the story take a lot of time setting up, fixing, expanding, and using their solar power. I know all about this topic. The book explores many essential implementation details. I get nerdy. In the story, they cook with electricity from their huge solar power installation. They light their homes, and they operate power tools. When the insane heat wave comes, they use some available AC to save themselves from dying in the heat. But in the book, solar power did not save the human world. It just saved some of the people. Most of the rest of the people still died, even the ones with solar power and electric cars, because they were not able, in the little time they had, to turn the correct corner fast enough. During any disaster, it is important to save as many people as can be saved, for all the usual reasons. In the book, the built human world, modern industrialized civilization, is not saved. At all. The human world collapses, and in the telling of the story, it is not long in going about it either. Once the built environment evaporates, most of humanity evaporates as well. As a rule, they starve. Like actors whose only lines are found in Act 1, the mass of humanity exit the telling, their fate an utter mystery. So, what is Bill trying to accomplish with this new book of his? Bill is selling a drug. The drug is commonly called hopium. I'm sure you've heard of it. Possibly you consume some of it yourself. I don't, but then I'm a complete savage. I do understand that not everyone can be a complete savage, so Bill has a ready market for his brand of hopium. He will sell 1 million copies of Here Comes the Sun in the first month. It will shoot to the top of all the bestsellers lists. Hopium is the shit. Hopium sells. Everyone wants them some hopium, bruh. I am not here to pitch my book. I should pitch it. But in the spirit of intellectual honesty, I won't. Besides, my book will never sell. It won't shoot anywhere. I am an unknown author, and I always will be. I am not a Bill McKibben, and to be very clear, I don't ever want to be. But though I am nobody, I can still deliver a message that I think needs to be heard, even if only by a few. Perhaps those few who are not buying the hopium anymore. The message is this. Solar power cannot save the human world, nor can any other kind or combination of alternative energy save the human world. Not the built human world, not modern industrialized civilization, not any of that at any level or extent of complexity can or will be saved by any technological solution that thoughtful people can come up with. We can and should try to save people. We might even manage to do that in some cases. But when the global heating axe falls on our necks and shears off 300 years of progress, add scare quotes if you get this part, then the vast sea of humanity, having not understood their predicament until the last possible instant, will fall off the edge of history. That's why I wrote the book I did when I did it. I'm trying to save people by teaching them how to recognize the real threats embedded in their daily lives. I'm probably too late. Just look at the headlines for proof of how late it is. But hey, here we are. Oddly enough, the book contains hopeful moments. There is something that can still be salvaged during the collapse of 300 years of modernity, mostly being simple human dignity. Dignity is not much, but these days we take what we can get. Fossil fuels are clearly part of a past age that we must move beyond. But the same should be said for everything made of fossil fuels, and that includes 100% of everything, including solar power. When the age of fossil fuels comes to an inglorious end, as it will, because it must, because of physics, then that is the day the fairy tale ends. Solar is shadowed, wind power winds down, agriculture withers, driving hits a ditch, and flying is grounded. You can make your own list. Please do. Destinations of all kinds fall off the map. There can be no happy ending here. That's just how it works out this time. Though, if I have read the future correctly, there will be some hopeful beginnings out there. I suggest we do not need more books filled with pre-chewed hopium, food for babies. That approach encourages us to cling like frightened children to a past that, if you look at it clearly, was not a uniformly happy one and could not have ended well in most cases. I propose instead we take a fact-based and data-driven approach to assessing our next moves. The data is not looking favorable. A fair appraisal of the facts does not encourage optimism. By most accounts, we have entered the end game, and we do not have many moves left. All the moves that we can and will make, therefore, need to make a difference toward the outcome. But sure, get you some solar power. Don't forget the battery bank. You can thank me later. Regardless of all that, don't die. So, those are my thoughts on alternative energy and solar power. Just to reiterate, we rely on fossil fuels for 100% of everything we do 100% of the time. You can't have solar panels without a factory making solar panels. That factory has to have electricity, water, and employees. And the electricity, the water, and the employees are all delivered using fossil fuels, not solar panel power. The solar panels these days are made almost entirely in China, and they are shipped from China in containers on cargo ships powered by fossil fuels. The cargo ships are built using fossil fuels of metal that is taken from the ground using fossil fuels. Every part of the solar panel, the aluminum, the plastics, the silicon wafers, all of it is mined from the ground and or processed and or assembled using fossil fuels. Your solar panels, when delivered using fossil fuels, will last anywhere from 15 to 20 years. And after that, if we really have, in the meantime, given up on fossil fuels, then you won't have solar panels. You won't. And you have to plan for that day. If you have them now, definitely use them. If you don't have them now, you're not going to get them. And even if you do have them now, you won't be able to keep them. This is an interim solution. You can use your electricity however you want to use it, including cooking food, heating water, and all those things, but only if you have an electrified house, which you don't. Once you start making your own electricity, you don't worry about the cost of electricity. Once you have your own electricity, you start looking for novel and important ways to use it. So you cook with it, that means replacing your cooktop. You heat your water with it, that means replacing your hot water heater. And if you have an electric hot water heater that's using resistant heating, that's too much of a current draw. So you have to buy a modern hot water heater, probably been made in Germany, that uses a heat pump. And if you're heating your house with electricity and you're not using a heat pump, then you're going to have to change that. If you're heating your house with natural gas, you have to change that. If you have an 80 amp service to your house and you add solar power to it, you can use your 80 amp service as a backup, but only until it's not there anymore. So you need to have a lot of solar panels, and you need to have a lot of batteries to make up for the times when you don't have sunlight or not enough. So that's how this works, people. That's just how it works. You think it works another way? It doesn't. I know how this works. And everything I just said about solar energy, and I could have said more. I mean, it's even worse than that. And everything I just said about solar panels and solar power applies equally, if not more so, to wind power and hydro dams and nuclear power. And that's how it is. And when they say, oh, well, we'll just remove the CO2 from the atmosphere, they're going to need electricity to do that. And where's their electricity going to come from? Well, if they're removing CO2 from the atmosphere to offset CO2 emissions, then they can't really use coal-fired power plants and natural gas-fired power plants to do that. They need solar, I guess maybe nuclear-fired power plants to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. Otherwise, they're just defeating their purpose. Now, burning fossil fuels to remove CO2 from the atmosphere from fossil fuels, does this make any sense? It does make sense, actually, because there's a big propaganda win there. And, people like Bill McKibben will trot out these projects to say, oh, look, they're removing CO2 from the atmosphere. Here's a brick of CO2 that came out. Here's a brick of calcium carbonates made out of CO2 from the atmosphere. Look at this brick. This costs $1,000 to create this brick, and all this technology, and we can scale it up. Well, the energy to run that probably came from a coal-fired power plant. Now, they won't tell you that, because this is not about solving a problem, is it? This is narrative warfare. This is telling a story. They're telling a story. Bill McKibben is telling a story. Al Gore will tell you a story. We have to do this, we have to do that. And part of the story is going to be we have to punish the fossil fuel industry. That must, make them pay for their fair share. And if they have to pay to pollute, what do you think the cost for them to pay ends up? It ends up in their products. And what are their products? Diesel, gasoline, aviation fuel, kerosene, right? All the stuff that we need to survive. We need these things to survive. So they will never go to the fossil fuel industry and make them pay. They will never do that. Because the first time they do that, and the fossil fuel industry says, oh, that's fine, Al, that's fine, whatever, it's going to pass it on to the consumer. And people's price of their gasoline, the most precious thing in their lives, not even joking, the price of the gasoline they complain about constantly, the price will jump by 50%. Because the fossil fuel industry is being forced to remove CO2 out of the atmosphere, $1,000 brick at a time. It's not going to happen, folks. And none of these things are going to happen. No, you don't know that. Yeah, I know that. Well, they might come up with, no, they won't. Well, you're just not giving enough credit to innovation. I know all about innovation. I also know something about the laws of physics. And you can't remove CO2 from the atmosphere without electricity. Right? And chemicals, and a chemical plant, and employees who come to work to operate that plant, and all this stuff that has to be removed. And then the bricks of CO2 have to be stored someplace. And that means a mine shaft, and digging a mine shaft, or placing it someplace where it can be safe. And you're going to have to extract 35 billion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere annually just to keep up with how much we're emitting annually. 35 billion tons. 35 billion tons of anything. Have you ever seen 35 billion tons of something? I haven't. I mean, we're talking about volcanoes. We're talking about things the size of, Mount St. Helens. We're talking about mountain ranges. 35 billion tons is a lot of tons. A ton is 2,000 pounds. And if we're going to save ourselves from global heating by removing CO2, that's 35 billion tons annually just to keep up with current emissions. It makes no sense. Except it makes all the sense in the world. And I'm going to give Bill McKibben credit for doing something that people desperately need. And that's a story. It's a story. It's just a fairy tale. Does he know that? Well, maybe not. Does Al Gore know that he's 40 years behind the times? Psh, probably not. People don't tell him that. Oh, Mr. Gore, oh, Vice President Gore, you're so good. You've always stayed on message, and you have this stimulating presentation you give, and all this information is still so current and so relevant, and we need to hear so much more of what you have to say. And it's a fairy tale. It's all a fairy tale, because he's not talking about leaving fossil fuels in the ground. Never. And Bill McKibben won't do that either. And they own their private jets, and they fly around the country, and I would even allow for that. I would even allow for Al Gore to get in his private jet and fly around the country if his message was, stop burning fossil fuels, leave it in the ground. And you might say, well, Al, that's going to be kind of hard for you to fly around the country in your private jet if you're leaving fossil fuels in the ground. You might say, yeah, that's fine, and I will pay that price when the price comes. But in the meantime, I'm telling everybody to listen to me to leave fossil fuels in the ground. And when the day comes I can't fly around and tell people that anymore, then I'll get on a horse and I'll ride to the next town and I'll say the same thing all over again. Leave fossil fuels in the ground until we leave fossil fuels in the ground. That could be his story. But it's not. Because he doesn't want to do that. I don't mean the horse part. I mean, he doesn't want to leave fossil fuels in the ground. He doesn't want to do that. And Bill McKibben will tell you a fairy tale about how solar power will save the world and how cheap it's getting and how inexpensive it is to generate copious amounts of electricity to sell to the public and put it on the grid and all this kind of stuff. And he won't say you have to leave fossil fuels in the ground. I mean, maybe he'll say that in passing, but he's not going to write a book about leaving fossil fuels in the ground. That's what I did. He's not going to do that. He might say something in passing while he's talking about something else that people do want to hear about. Tell me again, Uncle Bill, tell me again, Grandpa, how great solar power is, because I really want to invest in solar power, but it doesn't pencil out and it's so expensive. But tell me again how great it is. And I bought solar panels and I have it on my house and it costs a lot of money. And I'm wondering if I did the right thing, because now I can't afford a brand new Corvette. But still, tell me how great I am because I did the right thing and I spent the money and I didn't buy the latest model of Corvette. And instead, I bought the solar panels. And tell me again what a great decision that was, because I'm not feeling very good about my choices and I'd rather have the Corvette. I need to have reinforcement. So he gives them reinforcement. He's providing a service. He's reinforcing people who already know what the right thing is and have already done the right thing. Because people who will never buy solar panels are not going to suddenly turn around and buy solar panels because here comes the sun or because of Al Gore. They're not going to do that. They're already on the side who thinks this whole fucking thing is a hoax. And they like that to be the answer. That's their fairy tale. And then Bill McKibben comes along and solar panels, solar powers, alternative energy writ large is going to save us from global heating. And that's also a story. Because it won't. Because it can't. Because it can't do it. You need solar. You can't make solar panels with solar panels. Could you? Maybe. Could I figure that out? Oh, boy. You'd have to also work all the supply chains into that. So if there's aluminum frames around the solar panels and those aluminum frames come from Australia, they probably don't come from China, whatever. Yeah, supply chains, that's what we call it, supply chains. It comes from India. Let's say the aluminum channels come from India. And maybe one other thing, the copper wire comes from India. Well, you're going to have to now go to India. And you're going to have to find your supplier and see how they make the aluminum channel. That's interesting. So actually, you're just forming the channels. You actually buy your bulk aluminum in big bricks, right? Big ingots. You buy your bulk aluminum from what? Romania? Okay. Now you have to go to Romania. You look at the Romanians and, oh, I see. This is the stuff you ship to India. Very nice. Very nice. Blocks of aluminum. Very nice. So how do you make these? And then you're out mining, ore with a big truck and with dynamite and these big trucks and there's scoopers and dumpers and all this stuff, and it all goes into a kiln and it gets melted and there's a special process, and the process is expensive and the process has its own feedstocks. Now you have another supply chain. Well, how do you run this smelting process? And by the way, these trucks, all these scoopers and dippers and dumpers and all the the overhead conveyors and all the ore going into the smelter and the fire and the smelting, and it comes out and you put it in bricks, and all that has to be run on solar panels. Oh, God. Okay, but they do make electric excavators. Okay, let's buy us an electric excavator. Let's go to Germany, and they make, or South Korea or Japan, where they make electric excavators. I've even seen these things with great big huge power cables going out. So you're going to make electric excavators. Okay, we can electrify that. We can even have the electricity come from solar panels. Hey, there's a thought. So let's have a huge field of solar panels that we're trying to make with solar power, but we haven't done it yet, but we will. So I have a huge field of solar panels to run this electric equipment that does the dipping and does the dumping and all this stuff. Okay, wait, where'd that come from? Where'd that electric scooper come from that you're running in the mine and you're scooping up the ore? Well, that came from Germany. So now you have to go to Germany and you're looking at the German factory. So you're making electric excavators that we're going to use in Romania to excavate the ore, which we're then going to send someplace else to smelt it using solar power. And then we're going to send the ingots to India somehow using solar power. But that's what we have to do because we're making solar panels with solar power. Remember? Try to keep up. So we send the ingots to India. They melt the ingots using solar power to then extrude them into the aluminum rails that are then shipped again somehow to China using solar power. I don't know how we're doing this, but stick with me. And then the Chinese have the aluminum rails that go around the solar panels, and that's one component. That's one component. You gotta make it up. You think I'm making that up? You guys just made all that up? And remember, now we're in Germany at the factory that makes the excavator that runs on electricity. And it's made out of cast iron, and it's made out of hydraulics and hydraulic hoses and hydraulic oil. And it's got great big huge steel tracks that are moves around on, and there's glass, and there's a cockpit, and there's all these computers that run the thing. And, and there's maintenance problems and all the parts that go into that thing. And just to make that electric excavator to work in your mine with electricity, to work with the ore and smelt the ore with electricity and send the ore to India somehow with electricity to extrude it into the aluminum rails so they can go to China so they can make solar panels with solar panels. Electricity. Making solar panels with solar panels. You see what I did there? That shit is never happening. That's bullshit. That bullshit is never happening because that's just bullshit. What I just told you, everything I just told you, is about 1/100th of a fairy tale. 1/100th of a fairy tale. Maybe 1/1000th. That gave you a headache. And you still don't believe it. You're thinking, man, that can't be right. Hold on. Manufacturing is a big deal. Big deal. And you can't do it with solar power. You can charge your electric car, but you can't make an electric car using solar panels. Solar power. You can't do it. You think you can. They'll tell you you can. Hey, Tesla will even sell you the solar panels and have the guy come out and install them. And Tesla will sell you a wall battery. Where'd those panels come from? How were they manufactured? Where'd that wall battery come from? How was that manufactured and transported? And how was your Tesla manufactured and transported? And where'd all those parts come from? There's a million parts. Everything from tiny little machine screws up to copper wire, up to the motors themselves that drive all the wheels, and the batteries that go in there, and all, the fabric inside that you sit on, and the dashboard, and the LCD screen, and all the computers. How many computers are in a Tesla? 40? And then you can charge your Tesla with solar power. You think I'm being mean? You think I'm being hard on Bill McKibben and Al Gore? You think so? You think I'm just being a curmudgeon? Okay. Fine. You think whatever you like. That's all I have to say. Yeah, I'm a son of a bitch, aren't I? Aren't I a son of a bitch? Aren't I a nice guy? Don't you just want to just hang around with me? Aren't I the funnest guy? Don't come here for the hopium. Don't come here for a fairy tale. You're not getting shit out of me that sounds like a fairy tale. You're getting reality straight up, unadulterated, uncut, unpainted, unvarnished reality. That's all I got. And it's bad. It's really bad. Oh, it's so bad. It's really bad. It's funny how bad it is. Oh, you don't even know how bad it is. This is going to be a shit show. Here comes the sun. Inconvenient truth. Oh man, this is going to be such a shit show. Buy the book. I'm thinking about a second one. Ha! Imagine that. My wife and I were talking this morning, and I think it's because the first one is now out of my head. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to have anxiety attacks over the errors that are in it and all this kind of stuff. There's errors in it. There's things I would have done differently. Whatever. Fledged. Fly away. And now I can start thinking about the second one. And, also unpleasant. It has to be. It has to be unpleasant. It's all unpleasant at this point. We've got to get to the lifeboats. And, unpleasant books don't sell. There you go. So what? Our situation is unpleasant. Link to the books are in the description, as is a link to buy me a coffee. And we'll see you savages next time. Don't die.